Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time we're going to really dig into how the world works, at least according to Vaclav Smil.
Smil. He's quite the polymath, I suppose you'd say.
Definitely. And I'm excited to pick your brain about his book, How the World Really Works.
Sure,
So,
sure. I find his work to be very, well, insightful, you know? He's got this way of cutting through all the noise and getting to the core of things.
yeah, he's kind of like a myth buster for all the grand narratives we tell ourselves about how the world works.
Exactly. He forces us to, well, to confront those assumptions we often take for granted. And sometimes those confrontations can be a little, well, uncomfortable.
Definitely. Especially when he starts talking about our dependence on fossil fuels. That can be a bit of a reality check for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. But that's kind of his point, isn't it? To show us how things really work, even if it's not always not always what we want to hear.
Right. So in this deep dive, we're going to focus on how energy and food production are, they're like two sides of the same coin.
And that's a really important connection that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, you don't really think about it until you start digging into, like how much energy it takes to grow a tomato or, get a steak on your plate.
It's true. And Smill's book, it does a really great job of revealing all those hidden energy flows that underpin our modern food system.
It's mind-blowing. And it all starts with this basic concept of energy conversion, right?
Right, yeah. Smill argues that life itself is essentially a process of energy conversion.
So like from those early microbes harnessing sunlight to, to us humans burning fossil fuels to power our cars and our factories.
Exactly. Every living thing from the tiniest bacteria to, well, to us is constantly converting energy in order to survive.
It's like I don't know, it's like this universal dance of energy.
I like that. A universal dance of energy. And Smill's book helps us understand the choreography, so to speak.
And speaking of choreography, Smil traces how humans have gotten better and better at tapping into energy sources outside our own bodies.
Right, right. He calls this extrasomatic energy use. It's a fancy way of saying, using energy that's not directly from our own muscles.
It's like fire, right? That was kind of our first big leap forward in terms of extrasomatic energy.
Absolutely. And then came things like domesticated animals for plowing fields and windmills for grinding grain.
And of course, eventually, we stumbled upon these incredibly energy-dense fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas.
Yeah, and that's where things really start to, they start to take off in terms of our ability to, transform the world around us.
Okay, so before we get too deep into that, I think we need to take a step back and define energy a bit more clearly.
Sure, sure. It seems like a simple concept, right?
Yeah.
But it can get pretty complex when you start to really dig into it.
Yeah, like what exactly is energy anyway? I mean, we use the word all the time, but um, I'm not sure I could give you a clear definition.
Well, the scientific definition of energy is the ability to do work, to cause motion or change.
Okay, so like if I push a box across the floor, that's energy being used.
Exactly. You're applying force to the box, and that force causes it to move, so you're doing work.
Right, okay, that makes sense. So how does that relate to like the energy we get from food or fossil fuels?
Well, Smill argues that to truly understand how the world works, we need to grasp the concept of energy density. It's a measure of how much energy is stored in a given amount of material.
Okay, so like a lump of coal has more energy density than a piece of wood the same size.
Exactly. You can burn that lump of coal for much longer and get a much hotter fire.
So the higher the energy density, the more bang for your buck you get.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And this concept of energy density is really crucial for understanding the impact of fossil fuels on our world.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects. So fossil fuels are incredibly energy dense, and that's what's allowed us to power all these amazing technologies and innovations.
Right, and that includes our modern food system.
So when we're talking about energy and food production, we're really talking about fossil fuel.
To a large extent, yes. Smill argues that modern agriculture is entirely dependent on the concentrated energy we get from fossil fuels.
But how? I mean, obviously tractors and combines use fuel, but what are some of the less obvious ways fossil fuels are used in food production?
Well, think about fertilizers, for example. They're essential for boosting crop yields, but most people don't realize how much energy it takes to produce them.
So even something as seemingly simple as fertilizer has this hidden, this hidden energy footprint.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a prime example of how energy conversion is uh, is at the heart of our modern food system.
This is fascinating. We've gone from tiny microbes harnessing sunlight to, well, to humans unlocking the power of fossil fuels to to feed billions of people.
It's quite a story, isn't it? And it's a story that that Smil tells really well in his book.
Yeah, he really lays it all out there.
He doesn't shy away from the complexities.
And he certainly doesn't sugarcoat the challenges we're facing as a society when it comes to energy and sustainability.
Not at all. But that's what makes his work so valuable. He's forcing us to, well, to confront these difficult questions and to think critically about how we're going to power our world in the future.
Okay, so we've talked about, energy conversion as this like fundamental force of life and how fossil fuels have really amplified our ability to harness energy. But I'm curious, like, how is this actually played out in terms of how we grow food?
Well, Smil does a really fascinating job of taking us back in time to show us just how much things have changed.
Oh, yeah? Like how?
So he paints this picture of a wheat farm in western New York back in 1801.
Okay, 1801. So, like, no tractors, no combines, no giant irrigation
Nope,
systems.
none of that. Everything was done by hand, powered by, well, by human and animal muscle.
Wow. So, like, literally every step of the process from planting to harvesting.
Exactly. Plowing the field, sowing the seeds, harvesting, threshing, the whole nine yards, all back-breaking labor.
It's hard to even imagine, like how much time and energy would it take to grow, I don't know, like an acre of wheat back then?
Well, Smil estimates that it took about 120 hours of human labor.
Wow, 120 hours just to grow like a single acre of wheat.
Yeah, plus another 70 hours or so of ox labor.
So like almost 200 hours of combined human and animal labor just for like a tiny patch of wheat.
It gives you, a real sense of how different things were, right? Like how much work went into producing food before the advent of fossil fuels and modern machinery.
Yeah, it really it puts this into perspective. So
Yeah.
when did things start when did fossil fuels start to make your way into agriculture?
Well, Smil takes us to the Red River Valley in the early 1900s to show us the early stages of mechanization.
Okay, so like horse-drawn plows and maybe some steam-powered threshers.
Yeah, things like that. And even those early advancements had a pretty significant impact on the amount of human labor required to grow food.
I bet, but it was still like a far cry from the massive, fully mechanized farms we see today, right?
Oh, absolutely. But it was a step in that direction, a gradual transition, but a transition nonetheless.
So, okay, let's fast forward to like the 21st century. What does wheat farming look like in a place like Kansas, for example?
Well, in modern Kansas, you've got these vast fields that are plowed, sown, and harvested by these massive machines.
Yeah, I've seen those combines. They're like spaceships on wheels.
They're pretty incredible, and they can harvest and thresh grain simultaneously, and then trucks whisk it away to silos.
It's like a perfectly choreographed dance of machines.
It really is, and the result is a staggering increase in efficiency.
Okay, but like how much more efficient are we talking? Like how does modern wheat farming in Kansas compare to that 1801 farm in New York?
Well, Smil points out that a single hectare of wheat in modern Kansas yields about 3,500 kilograms of grain.
3,500 kilograms. Wow, that's a lot of wheat.
Yeah, and it only requires about 2 hours of human labor.
2 hours. That's insane compared to like the 120 hours it took back in 1801.
It's a pretty dramatic illustration of how much fossil fuels have transformed agriculture.
Yeah, no kidding. But it's not just about efficiency, right? I mean, this shift in how we grow food has had like massive ripple effects on society as a whole.
Absolutely. As farming became more mechanized and efficient, fewer people were needed to work the land.
Right, which led to like that mass migration from rural areas to cities.
Exactly, and that fueled the growth of industrial and service sectors, which is, well, that's pretty much the world we live in today.
So like the way we produce food has literally shaped the structure of our societies.
It's one of those interconnected systems that Smil is always talking about. You can't really understand one without understanding the other.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
But speaking of interconnected systems, let's shift gears a bit and talk about electricity. It's something we use every day, but I got to admit, I don't really understand what it is at a fundamental level.
You're not alone there. Even physicists struggle to define electricity in simple terms.
So it's kind of like we've tamed this mysterious force without fully grasping its true nature.
I I think that's a good way to put it. It's like it really is amazing when you think about all the complex systems that have to work together just so we can, turn on a light or cook dinner.
I know, right? We're surrounded by these invisible energy flows, and we don't even really think about them until they're gone.
Right. Like imagine if the power went out for, I don't know, like a week, things would get pretty chaotic pretty quickly, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we're so dependent on electricity for like everything, our food, our water, our communication systems. It's kind of scary when you really stop and think about it.
It is. And that brings us to, well, I guess kind of a crucial question, right? If we're so reliant on these energy intensive systems, how do we make them more sustainable?
Right. Because like we were talking a lot about fossil fuels and how they've kind of, enabled this incredible growth in food production and technology and everything. But it's also clear that we can't just, keep burning fossil fuels forever.
Definitely not. I mean, climate change is, well, it's a very real threat, and we have to find ways to reduce our reliance on these carbon intensive energy sources.
So like what are some of the key things we need to be thinking about as we try to transition to a more sustainable energy future?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is the sheer scale of the transition. Fossil fuels still provide something uh, like 80% of the world's energy, right? So replacing that with renewable sources like, solar and wind, it's a monumental task.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's not just about, putting up more solar panels and wind turbines. It's about like rethinking our entire energy infrastructure.
Exactly. We need to build new transmission lines. We need to figure out how to store energy more efficiently, and we need to develop new technologies that can help us use energy more wisely.
Right. And it's not just a technological challenge either. It's also a social and political one, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are going to be, there are going to be winners and losers in this transition, and we need to find ways to make sure that everyone benefits from a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
Okay. So big challenges, but also hopefully some big opportunities.
For sure. I mean, think about all the new jobs and
Right.
industries that could be created as we shift to a more sustainable energy system.
Yeah, that's true. It could be a real engine for economic growth,
Yeah.
and not just in developed countries, but in developing countries as well.
Exactly. So it's a complex issue, but it's also a really exciting one, I think, because it's a chance to really rethink how we power our world and create a better future for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. It's daunting, but it's also incredibly hopeful. So I guess the key takeaway for our listeners today is that, well, energy matters.
It really does.
And understanding how energy works and the challenges and opportunities we're facing as we try to transition to a more sustainable energy future, well, that's critical for all of us.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for our deep dive into Vaclav Smil's How the World Really Works. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
And thanks to all of you out there for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show for more deep dives into, well, all sorts of fascinating topics. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.